Have you ever felt more lost after healing than you did before you started? You thought facing your shadow would give you answers. You did the work. You confronted your demons. You let go of toxic patterns. Walked away from relationships that no longer served you, maybe even left that soul-crushing job. But now, you're sitting in this strange emptiness, wondering if I'm not broken anymore. Why does life still feel meaningless? Carl Jung warned us about this. Facing the shadow isn't the end of your journey. It's actually the beginning of something much deeper. Meet Lena. She's 36, sitting in her apartment on a Tuesday morning staring at a cup of coffee that's gone cold. A year ago, she was someone completely different. She had a corporate job that paid well, but drained her soul. She was in a relationship that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. She was the person everyone came to for advice, the one who had it all together. Then she started doing shadow work. She read Jung. She went to therapy. She faced the parts of herself she'd been hiding since childhood. The anger she wasn't allowed to feel, the dreams she'd abandoned to be practical, the wild creative spirit she'd buried under layers of should. And it worked. She left the job. She ended the relationship. She stopped being everyone's emotional caretaker. But here's what no one tells you about healing. Sometimes freedom feels like falling. I don't know what I want anymore, Lena whispers to her reflection. I don't even know who I am when I'm not trying to be useful. She's not alone. Thousands of us have done the Carl Jung Shadow Work, faced our wounds, and still feel empty. Not broken anymore, but not whole either. Floating in this strange space between who we used to be and who we're becoming. If this sounds familiar, you're not lost. You're exactly where you need to be. What Jung discovered and what Lena was experiencing is that we live most of our lives split into fragments. There's the person we show the world, what Jung called the persona. It's the mask we wear, the role we play to feel safe, accepted, loved. Then there's the shadow. Everything we've pushed down, denied, rejected about ourselves. The parts of us that didn't fit the family system, the culture, the image we needed to maintain. But here's what most people miss. There's a third part, your true self. Not the ego that needs to achieve and prove and perform. Not the shadow that holds your rejected pieces. Your authentic essence, the part of you that existed before you learned you needed to be different to survive. For 36 years, Lena lived as her persona. The responsible one, the achiever, the good daughter who became the perfect employee, who became the supportive girlfriend. She was so good at this role that she forgot it was a role at all. When she started shadow work, that mask began to crack. She saw how much rage she'd been carrying. Rage at always putting others first, at abandoning her dreams for stability, at making herself small to make others comfortable. She saw how her helpfulness was sometimes control, how her strength was sometimes just fear of vulnerability. This is the brutal gift of shadow work. You see clearly, perhaps for the first time, how much of your life has been performance. But here's the paradox, that therapy doesn't always prepare you for when you drop the mask and integrate the shadow. You don't automatically know who you are underneath. You just know who you're not. Lena used to wake up knowing exactly what her day would bring. Meetings, deadlines, taking care of everyone else's needs. Now she wakes up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the terrifying kind. The kind that asks, without your roles, without your wounds to heal, who are you? This is what Jung called the void between the masks and the soul. It's the space where most people panic and either go backward to old patterns or forward into new roles that are just updated versions of the same performance. But what if this emptiness isn't a problem to solve? What if it's a doorway to walk through? Think about it. If you spent decades building an identity around being needed, being strong, being perfect, when you let go of that identity, of course, there's going to be space, empty space, raw space. space that feels vulnerable and uncertain. But space is also potential. Space is also freedom. Space is where your true self can finally breathe. The question isn't, who am I without my masks? The question is, who am I when I'm not performing for anyone, including myself? This is where most people get stuck. They think purpose should arrive with a marching band and a detailed life plan. They expect clarity to replace confusion immediately. They want their authentic self to show up fully formed like ordering something online. But the self doesn't work that way. The self speaks in whispers, in moments of unexpected joy, in things that make you lose track of time. The self emerges not through thinking, but through being. Not through achieving, but through allowing. Lena spent months waiting for her purpose to reveal itself. She tried career assessments, vision boards, meditation retreats. She read every self-help book about finding your calling. But the harder she looked for her purpose, the more elusive it became. Because here's what she was missing. What most of us miss: you don't find your purpose. You become your purpose. What if everything you've been taught about purpose is backwards? What if your purpose was never about doing more, achieving more, becoming more successful? What if your purpose is about becoming more yourself? This is the revolutionary insight that changed everything for Lena, and it might change everything for you too. Your purpose isn't something you discover out there in the world. It's something you uncover within yourself. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying this mystery. He called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you think you should be. And he discovered something profound. Your purpose is essentially the unique frequency your soul wants to emit in this world. But here's the catch. This frequency only becomes clear when you stop trying to be anything other than exactly who you are. Think about a tuning fork. When you strike it, it doesn't try to make a sound. It doesn't force vibrations or struggle to find its note. It simply resonates at its natural frequency. Pure, clear, unmistakable. Your soul works the same way. But most of us have spent so long trying to vibrate at frequencies that aren't ours, trying to fit in, trying to succeed, trying to be loved, that we've forgotten our own note. Carl Jung Shadow Work clears the interference. It removes the layers of conditioning, trauma, and false beliefs that have been muffling your authentic frequency. But once those layers are gone, there's often silence. Not because there's nothing there, but because you've been listening for the wrong thing. You've been listening for external validation to tell you what your purpose should be. You've been waiting for a calling that looks impressive, meaningful, financially viable. You've been expecting your purpose to solve all your problems and make your life make sense. But Jung discovered something different. He found that purpose isn't about solving your life. It's about living your truth so completely that your very existence becomes a gift to the world. Let me tell you what happened when this insight hit Lena like lightning on a random Thursday afternoon. She was walking through the park, not thinking about anything important, when she passed a little girl feeding ducks with her grandmother. The child was telling the most elaborate story about each duck, their names, their jobs, their secret duck adventures. She was completely absorbed, utterly unself-conscious, radiating pure creative joy. And suddenly, Lena remembered. She remembered being 7 years old, making up stories for hours, creating entire worlds in her backyard. She remembered the feeling of words flowing through her like music, the way stories felt like magic spells that could transform everything. She remembered how that part of her got buried under "be practical" and "you can't make money from stories" and "it's time to grow up and be realistic." In that moment, watching this child live so freely in her imagination, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in decades: recognition. Not of what she should do, but of who she had always been underneath everything else. That's when she understood what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your purpose isn't separate from your authentic self. Your purpose is your authentic self expressed fully in the world. But here's what's so beautiful and so challenging about this truth. You can't think your way to your authentic self. You can't strategize or plan or force your way there. You can only remove what's in the way and listen. Really listen. Lena stopped looking for her purpose and started listening to what made her feel most alive, not successful, not productive, not impressive. Alive. She started writing again. Not because she wanted to be a writer, but because words felt like coming home. She started volunteering at a children's hospital, telling stories to kids who needed magic in their days. Not because she wanted to be a therapist or teacher, but because something in her lit up when she saw imagination heal fear. She wasn't building a career. She wasn't following a plan. She was following a feeling. The feeling of her soul finally being able to express itself authentically. And that's when something magical happened. People started noticing. Not her resume or her achievements, but her energy. The way she moved through the world when she was being herself instead of performing herself. Opportunities started appearing. Not the ones she had been chasing, but ones that seemed designed specifically for who she actually was. A local nonprofit asked her to develop storytelling programs. A publisher reached out after seeing her volunteer work featured in a community newsletter. But here's the most important part. Even if none of those opportunities had appeared, Lena was already living her purpose. Because her purpose wasn't about external recognition or career success. It was about the integrity of being completely herself. Jung put it perfectly. Your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens? You're not failing at finding your purpose. You're finally becoming quiet enough to hear it. You're not lost. You're just not faking anymore. And in a world full of people performing themselves to death, authenticity is the most radical purpose of all. So how do you move from the emptiness after shadow work to the fullness of authentic purpose? How do you go from, I don't know who I am, to, I'm becoming who I've always been? The answer isn't what you might expect. It's not about taking action. It's about learning to be still enough to hear the voice that's been waiting your entire life to be listened to. Lena's transformation didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because she found the perfect career, or the right relationship, or the ideal living situation. It happened because she started treating her inner voice like it mattered more than anyone else's opinion about what her life should look like. Every morning, instead of immediately checking her phone or making to-do lists, she started sitting quietly with a journal and asking one simple question. What does my soul need today? Not what should I do? Not what would be productive? Not what would make others proud? What does my soul need? Some days the answer was rest. Some days it was movement. Some days it was creating something with her hands. Some days it was being in nature. Some days it was reaching out to an old friend. Some days it was solitude. She stopped judging these needs as selfish or impractical. She started seeing them as information, data about who she really was underneath all the conditioning. And slowly, patterns began to emerge. She noticed that she came alive around stories, not just telling them, but collecting them. She would spend hours listening to elderly people share their life experiences. She was drawn to documentaries about people who had overcome incredible odds. She found herself writing down overheard conversations that revealed something beautiful about the human spirit. She also noticed that children's laughter affected her differently than other sounds. It made something in her chest expand. She started paying attention to this feeling, following it like breadcrumbs. One Saturday, she volunteered to read stories at the local library's children's hour. She watched kids transform as they entered imaginary worlds. She saw shy children become brave, anxious children become calm, scattered children become focused. That's when she realized this wasn't just something she enjoyed. This was something the world needed, and she was uniquely positioned to offer it. But here's what's crucial. She didn't immediately quit everything and become a full-time storyteller. She didn't pressure herself to monetize her passion or turn it into a career plan. She just kept following what felt alive. She started a small storytelling circle in her apartment building for neighborhood kids. She volunteered at the children's hospital once a week. She began collecting and sharing family stories from elderly community members. None of this felt like work because it flowed from who she was not, who she thought she should be. Jung called this living from the self, when your actions arise naturally from your authentic nature rather than from external expectations or internal pressure. And that's when Lena discovered the secret that changes everything. Purpose doesn't feel like striving. It feels like arriving. It feels like finally being allowed to be yourself completely. Purpose didn't appear in her life with a lightning bolt of clarity. It emerged gradually like dawn, so naturally that she almost didn't notice the transformation happening. One day, about 8 months after that walk in the park, a friend asked her, "Lena, you seem so different. So, yourself. What changed?" And Lena realized she couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the way she had stopped trying to find her purpose and started living it. She had stopped asking, "What should I do with my life?" and started asking, "How can I be more myself today?" The beautiful paradox is this: the moment you stop grasping for purpose, it begins flowing through you naturally. The moment you stop trying to be someone impressive, you become irresistibly authentic. The moment you stop performing your life, you start living it. This is what Jung meant when he talked about the transcendent function, the miraculous process by which seeming opposites unite to create something entirely new. The emptiness after shadow work and the fullness of authentic purpose aren't contradictions. They're dance partners. The emptiness creates space for the authentic self to emerge. The space allows your true nature to unfold without the constraints of old patterns and limiting beliefs. If you're in that space right now, if you've done the shadow work but don't know what comes next, trust this: your soul is preparing to speak. Your authentic self is gathering strength. Your purpose is composting in the rich soil of your willingness to be uncertain. You don't need to know your purpose yet. You just need to stay open to receiving it when it's ready to emerge. So how do you practically navigate this journey from shadow work to authentic purpose? How do you create the conditions for your true self to emerge? Jung taught that the psyche has its own wisdom, its own timing. You can't force individuation any more than you can force a flower to bloom. But you can create the right environment for growth. Here's what Lena learned and what you can start practicing today. First, develop the practice of inner listening. Every morning before you engage with the external world, spend 10 minutes in dialogue with your inner wisdom. Ask, what wants to emerge through me today? Not what you should do, but what wants to be expressed through your unique presence in the world. Write down whatever comes up without editing or judging. Some days it might be rest, some days creativity, some days connection, some days solitude. Trust that your soul knows what it needs for authentic expression. Second, pay attention to what makes you lose track of time. Jung said we can recognize the self by the energy it generates. When you're aligned with your authentic nature, time becomes fluid. You're not watching the clock or forcing yourself to continue. You're simply absorbed in the flow of being yourself. For Lena, this was storytelling and listening to people's life experiences. For you, it might be gardening, teaching, creating music, solving problems, making people laugh, or something completely unexpected. The key is noticing when you feel most alive and following that feeling like a compass. Third, practice what Jung called Active imagination. Instead of trying to think your way to your purpose, allow images, symbols, and fantasies to arise from your unconscious. Keep a dream journal. Pay attention to recurring themes in your imagination. Notice what metaphors speak to you. Your psyche is constantly communicating through symbols and images. Learning to understand this language can reveal aspects of your authentic self that your rational mind might miss. Fourth, embrace what Jung called the tension of opposites. You might feel pulled between security and freedom, independence, and connection, creativity, and practicality. Instead of choosing one side, hold the tension. Let both truths exist simultaneously. Your purpose often emerges not from resolving these tensions, but from finding a third way that honors both sides of your nature. Finding your purpose after Carl Jung Shadow Work is like letting a garden grow where a war once happened. The soil is rich with compost from everything you've released. The space is clear of weeds that would choke authentic growth. But now, you must be patient with the tender green shoots of your emerging self. You don't need to start with grand gestures or life-changing decisions. You start with absolute honesty about what feels alive and what feels deadening. You start with small acts of authenticity. You start with trusting that your soul has been waiting your entire life for permission to express itself fully. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But the same is true in reverse. Everything that inspires us about others points to qualities our own soul wants to express. Pay attention to the people who make you think, "I wish I could be like that." Not their circumstances or achievements, but their energy, their way of being in the world. Those qualities live within you too, waiting for integration. Your purpose isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more completely yourself than you've ever dared to be. If you're here listening to these words, it means your soul is already calling to you. It means some part of you recognizes the truth we've been exploring together. You may not know your purpose yet. You may still feel lost in the space between who you used to be and who you're becoming. You may wake up some mornings wondering if you made a mistake by leaving behind the safety of your old patterns. But here's what I want you to know from one soul to another. If you don't know your purpose yet, it doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're finally ready to receive a purpose that's real, a purpose that comes from your authentic self rather than from external expectations or internal pressure. The emptiness you might be feeling isn't a void to be filled. It's a sacred space where transformation happens. It's the pause between exhaling your old identity and inhaling your new life. Jung spent decades studying people who had undergone this process of individuation, of becoming who they truly are. And he discovered that the people who found genuine purpose, lasting fulfillment, and authentic joy weren't the ones who rushed through the discomfort of not knowing. They were the ones who learned to trust the process of becoming. Your purpose may arrive as suddenly as Lena's did in that moment of recognition, watching a child tell stories to ducks. Or it may emerge gradually like dawn breaking slowly across a landscape you've never seen before. Either way, it will come. Not because you deserve it or earned it, but because it's your birthright. Your authentic self wants to express itself through you. Your soul has gifts it wants to give the world. Your unique perspective has value that no one else can offer. The question isn't whether you have a purpose. The question is whether you'll create the conditions for that purpose to emerge. Will you keep listening to the voice inside that whispers, "What makes you come alive?" Will you trust that authenticity is more valuable than achievement? Will you have the courage to become who you truly are, even if it doesn't look like what you planned? As Jung said, your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. I want to leave you with an invitation. Take a moment right now to put your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. That rhythm has been with you since before you learned you needed to be anything other than yourself. Ask your heart, what wants to emerge through me? Don't think about the answer. Just listen. Trust what you hear even if it makes no logical sense. Your purpose is closer than you think. It's not hiding somewhere out there in the world waiting to be discovered. It's breathing inside you right now, waiting for permission to be expressed. If this conversation has stirred something in you, if you recognize yourself in Lena's story, if you feel that quiet stirring of recognition, trust it, follow it, honor it. And if you feel called to share this message with someone who might need to hear it, please do. Sometimes the most purposeful thing we can do is help another soul remember they're not alone on this journey of becoming. Your authentic self is ready. Your purpose is emerging. Your soul is calling. The only question left is, are you ready to answer?